What is up? It's Hobbyist First. Watch me turn these unwanted, unloved 1990s jungle tree bits into something suitable for the modern tabletop battlefield. I think a lot of hobbyists that have been around for a while may have some of these plastic jungle sprues in their collection, and they may be collecting dust or may have been forgotten over the years. I got these in the 3rd edition starter set for $40K in the late 90s, which means that these sprues have been in my life for over 20 years. I was looking for a palette cleanser between projects, and I thought that this was a great opportunity to add a few new terrain pieces to my collection and test out some new techniques as well. Because this is a terrain project, I was looking for a quick and easy way to get paint on these things. I opted to use rattle can primers, which were also going to serve as my base coat, and I use a can of Games Workshop Xandri Dust and an old can of some green camouflage paint that I had left over from an old project to get base coat on there. Leaving everything on the sprue, it was time to shade these pieces, so I went with a Beal Tan green shade on the vegetation parts, and I used the contrast skeleton horde on any of the tree branches, bark parts, and the bases. Using a medium-sized dry brush, I applied a light dusting of Ushabti bone over all the brown parts. Then, using a large dry brush, I applied a light dry brush of Ogren Camo, which is a very light green, and also the yellow called Averland Sunset. Just a little bit of it to break up the greenness of everything and just hit the top edges of things. Using my sprue clippers, which are also called side cutters because they have a flat edge that you can put up against the edge of your parts that you're trimming, I very carefully clipped off each piece from the sprue and organized them into groups. Now, what I would normally do is touch up the paint where the parts were clipped off because there'd be the sprue color visible, but because these pieces are molded in green and brown plastic and because they're terrain, I found that it wasn't necessary. There was really no visible scarring from where I clipped them off. Here was the fun part. This was like a puzzle. I have all these pieces separated into piles, and I wanted to use every single one of them. Honestly, I wanted to have no pieces left over when I was done and build 4 separate tree stands. And with a little bit of super glue and kind of planning things out, I got really close. However, we made it to the end, and there was this one piece left over. With everybody super glued onto their MDF circles, it was time to figure out the basing for them, and I decided to use this Vallejo ground texture paste that's like a gray pumice color to create the surface texture. For a lot of my miniatures, I glue sand down, but I'm trying to experiment and see what I can do with this product that I recently got, so I thought this was a low-risk project to test that out on. And I use an old brush to spread it around, and took quite a while to dry, maybe like 2 or 3 hours until it was dry to the touch. With the ground texture dry, now it was time for paint. The first coat of paint was some cheap black craft paint, which was applied roughly with a little bit of water to help it flow into the crevices. After about an hour, the black craft paint was dry enough for me to apply the second layer of paint, and this time I used dark umber. You'll notice for my basing material, I'm not using any expensive paints. It's all cheap stuff from Walmart and Hobby Lobby and Michaels. After about a half an hour, that dark brown paint was dry, and it was ready to receive a light dry brush of Ushabti bone, and that was applied using a medium dry brush. To finish off the look of everything, I took one of my trash brushes and applied Rhinox hide to all the base rims on the tree bases. I want to add, don't ever throw brushes away. When you're doing terrain, it's not a good idea to use expensive or good brushes. Don't throw them away. I mean, literally, you can use a brush until the bristles don't move anymore, and then you can use the handle to stir paint or to apply pastes and stuff. There's always a use for old brushes. Even when the handles are dead, you can cut them up and use them for terrain. Finished everything off by super gluing on a couple rocks, and then some craft glue was used to apply 2 different types of static grass. I finished everything off with a couple of these Gamer's Grass beige tufts. These jungle trees go great alongside some sneaky Blood Axe orcs. The Defenders of Kashyyyk. Or some good old-fashioned square-based fantasy trolls. If you're interested in more Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer 40k, or Star Wars Legion content, please consider subscribing to my channel and also selecting notifications so you can learn about other projects I'm working on or when I upload my large format Army Showcase videos. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.